So, a few days ago, I recorded this PSA video called Suicide is Never the Answer. And that was a live stream video, but I left out an important point about suicide, and that is that many people are suicidal because they hate themselves. That's where their pain stems from, is their self-hatred. So, in order to prevent suicide, we should also talk about self-hatred and what causes self-hatred. Because self-hatred leads to self-destructiveness. When people hate themselves, they end up digging their own grave in a lot of instances. They self-destruct, they engage in all kinds of dangerous behaviors, risky behaviors, and the worst case scenario is they end up killing themselves. But a lot of people are killing themselves just with a slow suicide. It's a soft kill, but they're wanting to die. And it stems from self-hatred. So we have to talk about self-hatred and we have to address that. What's causing people to hate themselves? I mean, there's all kinds of causes of why people hate themselves. But mostly it has to do with people knowing that they're not that great. Like, for instance, how hard would it be to love yourself if you're Steve Shives? Or how hard would it be to love yourself if you're very fat and if you're a gross person? If you're this gross, ugly troll, are you going to be able to love yourself? No, probably not. So self-hatred stems from when we self-reflect, we look in the mirror and we're dissatisfied with what we see. We know that in some form, in some way, we suck as people. A lot of it is moral failures. People feel guilty because they've done something stupid. They've done something evil in many cases, and they feel guilty about that. Or they're not following their conscience. You know, they're doing something they know they shouldn't be doing. And when you're doing something that you know you shouldn't be doing, if you're doing something bad or something unhonorable, something that a loser would do, you're going to hate yourself. That's only natural to hate yourself if you can't love yourself if you suck. And that the world will try to tell you, the social justice warriors out there will try to say, well, just love yourself and accept yourself for who you are. And, we're all just basically the same.
Like you just realized, well, we all might seem different. We're all really just the same.
And this is a delusional fantasy land of cupcakes and rainbows. At its core, okay, this attitude is just an inability to accept reality. Because we're not all the same, people. We're not. We're very different. Some of us are better than others. Some of us are very awesome. And some of us just suck. We're down in the dumps. So everything's on a spectrum. Everything is on a scale. And people who fall very low on that scale of awesomeness, who are kind of sucky loser people or immoral people, very highly degenerate people, these people are naturally going to hate themselves. How can you expect to have good self-esteem if you're a gross, degenerate person, an immoral person, etc., etc.? You can't expect to love yourself. You're going to find it an impossible task. So the only way to really love yourself is to correct all your flaws. Fix yourself. So if you find yourself hating certain aspects about yourself, unable to accept certain things about yourself, the solution isn't just to hide that stuff in the closet and pretend like it's not real and just love yourself despite all your flaws. That's impossible. The solution, and the only solution, is to fix your flaws and really be awesome, really be an incredible person. And, for instance, if you're a practically perfect person, then what's not to love? If you're practically perfect, if you have no flaws, it's going to be easy to love yourself. Of course it would be. What's not to love? So self-improvement is the key to loving yourself, getting to that next level, raising the bar for yourself, raising your standards for yourself, but following through on your expectations. You have to actually do it. You have to do the hard work. You have to put in the work. Because Look, self-esteem and loving yourself, this does not come freely. This is something you have to work for, because you can't just fool yourself. You can't just lie to yourself and say, oh yeah, I'm so great, but you know deep down that you're not great. You know you have all these flaws and these problems. No, that's not going to work. You're going to end up hating yourself. It's like that quote that says, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Well, the same principle applies to people. A person divided against himself cannot stand. Meaning, if you're harboring self-hatred, you will fall into a self-destructive lifestyle pattern. You will pick up certain vices. You will have bad behaviors. You will self-destruct. Because, yeah, if you hate yourself, of course, you're punishing yourself by indulging in all these dangerous things. In some way, you are trying to kill yourself. Because you feel unworthy. You feel undeserving of love. You feel undeserving of even life. And that's why a lot of suicidal people hate themselves. Kurt Cobain was just one of those examples of someone who hated themselves. He has a song that says, I hate myself and I want to die. See, those things go hand in hand. Hating yourself and self-destructiveness and suicidal tendencies. It all goes hand in hand. On a personal level, let me just share with you guys what helps me to love myself. I have a much easier time loving myself when I feel like I'm standing up against injustice. And my self-esteem is not perfect, but my self-esteem is improved vastly when I feel like I'm doing good things in the world, when I feel like I'm standing up against some kind of injustice, for instance, the injustice of death.
Death is a disease. It's like any other. And there's a cure. A cure. And I will find it.
All kinds of injustice. This really works. When you do something good, when you actually are helping people, it is easier to love yourself. This is true. And I think this is the same thing with a lot of my favorite people. Milo Yiannopoulos. He loves himself. He is known for having a high self-esteem. Why? Because he's fighting injustice.
I'm not so oppressed. Well, let's move on from women. If you don't care about female genital mutilation, don't care about forced marriages, don't care about acid thrown in the faces of your Islamic sisters, if you don't care about any of those things, fine. Let's talk about gays instead. In 12 Islamic countries, I could be killed for my sexuality. Is that okay? 100 million people live in countries where it is illegal to be homosexual. All of those countries are Islamic. This is not an ISIS thing. You know, you will see gays being thrown off the roof in ISIS-controlled territories. But this has nothing to do with terrorism. This is mainstream Muslim culture. Your religion does it everywhere your religion exists.
I think this is the same. It's true for Devin Tracy. He has a very high self-esteem. You can tell. Because he is fighting all kinds of injustice. You know, he's fighting the injustice of racial issues, the racism, that thing. He's fighting against all of that, the regressives. He has an important cause. And when you have an important cause and you feel like you're doing something valuable, and when you feel like you're some kind of asset in the world, like you're important, you're doing something important that you need to be doing because there's no replacement for you, then you're going to have a high self-esteem, you're going to love yourself, and that should reflect in your actions, in how you treat yourself. You're going to be more healthy. You're going to be living a healthier lifestyle and everything like that. It all comes back around. The more you love yourself, the more likely you're going to end up living forever. Because when you love yourself, you're really going to be serious about your eternal life. That's the ultimate form of love. All of this comes back down to living forever. And it's so important to love yourself if you're planning on living forever. Because the more you love yourself, the harder you're going to try to live forever. Do you see how that works? It's very connected. But there definitely is a strong correlation between the people who are doing amazing things in the world and the people who love themselves. And there is this idea that you shouldn't have too high of an ego. You shouldn't love yourself too much. That you shouldn't be having too much of a self-esteem. Like, too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. And that's true. We cannot be too high. We should not be too high and mighty, like we're king of the world. But we also shouldn't be too low in our self-esteem. You can get into trouble with either one of those. So you want to stay balanced. You do want to think well of yourself. You do need to have a self-esteem. That's very important. But you also don't want to be like, I'm king of the castle and I'm the best ever. And no, you actually need to have an attitude that you're not good enough. Because that's how you're going to want to improve yourself even more, is by thinking, oh, actually, I'm never good enough. I always need more. I need to do more. I need to be a better person. As good as I am, I still need to be better. I need to improve myself more. Be more of a perfectionist. And this is actually the attitude of a perfectionist, is that they're always looking in the mirror and not being quite satisfied. You need to nitpick. You need to pick apart your own flaws even more so and demand even more from yourself. So yeah, don't ever be too satisfied with yourself. Because if you're too satisfied, well, then what's to improve? No, you need to have an attitude of, actually, there's a lot more I could do. I need to be doing more. I need to get to another level. That's the attitude of a perfectionist. Now, you also want to be judging other people. Because when you judge other people, it kind of forces you to judge yourself, to perfect yourself. Because when you're judging other people, and this is another thing the social justice warrior people, they don't get. This is why the social justice warrior people are not as likely to be excellent people. Because you need to judge people as kind of a practice for judging yourself. The people who are really judging people and picking apart the flaws of other people, they're going to also be more inclined to judge themselves and pick apart their own flaws. It's like practice. When you judge other people, it's practice for judging yourself and fixing yourself. You can't help but to also try to fix yourself in that process, because no one wants to be guilty of the same things that we're picking apart in other people. So we're judging other people, and you're not going to want to have those same flaws. So you're going to make sure you're not guilty of those same things, because no one likes to be a hypocrite, naturally. So judge other people. It's going to help you to judge yourself. It's like training for judging yourself. Think of it as, yes, it's good. Judge other people. It's so important. I cannot stress that enough. Anyways, I think I've said what I wanted to say on this topic for now. This is more a full, complete anti-suicide PSA. If you are suicidal, the main message here is you need to improve yourself. Then you're going to love yourself. The more closer you can get to being a practically perfect person, the much easier time you're going to have loving yourself. So, with that said, thank you for listening, and may you love yourself truly, and may you love yourself so much to the point where you realize how important it is that you get to live forever. May you one day look in the mirror and say, wow, I am great. I do deserve to live forever. And then you're going to fight for it. Do that. And may you live forever.